From the outset, this story sounds like a joke from a trip blog. A guy went into the jungle with a backpack and disappeared. However, there is nothing funny about it. My name is Brian Gilmore. I am an independent documentary filmmaker who films rare natural phenomena and abandoned places. What I am about to tell you are not edited footage or a montage. It is what I saw and experienced myself. It all started with a letter that ended up in my mailbox. Inside the envelope was an ancient map of the Amazon basin. It was covered with strange symbols, spirals, eyes, something resembling giant footprints. There was no signature or explanation accompanying the letter, only coordinates and a short phrase, "The stone guardians that walk." I decided it was someone's joke. A few hours later, a second letter arrived in my email. If you want real discoveries, go alone. Nobody must know. Common sense disagreed. I refused to believe it. However, something shifted inside me, either journalistic curiosity or a strange calling. By evening, I was already looking for plane tickets to Manaus, the capital of the Brazilian Amazon. The next morning, Manaus greeted me with heat and humidity as if the air were drinkable. There, I hired a motorboat with a guide. We went deeper into the Rio Negro and then walked along barely visible trails. The guide, a strong Indian named Juan, just shook his head when I gave him the coordinates. "There's nothing there," he said. "No villages, no rivers. Only the sacred lands of the stone spirits. We don't go there." I offered him money, but Juan refused to go any farther with me. He gave me a compass and some advice on how to navigate by the stars. Finally, he said, "If you hear the earth breathing, leave." By the end of the second day, the jungle had closed in so tightly that even at noon, it felt like I was walking at night. The vines stretched out as if they were alive, and my feet sank into the damp ground. It seemed as if the forest was watching my every step. When the twilight became almost impenetrable, I came out onto a surprisingly flat clearing. In the middle stood a black monolith covered with moss, as tall as a 3-story house. It was carved with the same spirals and eyes that I had seen on the map. I pitched my tent and had dinner. I got ready for bed, but I couldn't sleep. Through the rustling of the leaves, I could hear a low rumble like distant thunder. With each passing hour, it became more noticeable, as if something huge was awakening underground. At midnight, the earth shook. I jumped up, and at that moment, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the jungle for a second. But that second was enough to make my heart sink. Silhouettes began to emerge from the fog, as if from another reality. At first, I thought they were huge trees, but they were moving. They were stone giants, gray-green, entwined with vines, with moss instead of hair. Their eyes glowed with an amber fire. Each step echoed in my chest. There were at least 6 of them, and they were all coming toward me. I retreated, stumbling over roots. One of the giants bent down, stretched out his enormous hand, and lightly touched the ground in front of me. The gesture was clear without words. "Follow them." Fear paralyzed me, but along with it grew a strange feeling of trust. It was as if something ancient within me recognized these creatures. I followed them. We walked for a long time, as if time had stopped. Darkness thickened, but the light from their eyes illuminated the path. Suddenly, the jungle parted, revealing a giant plateau. In the center stood a temple made of black basalt. Its walls seemed to grow directly out of the rock without a single seam. The golems surrounded me. One approached a giant stone door, ran his hand over it, and moved the stone aside. I stepped inside. Inside, it was dimly lit, and it smelled of damp stone, ancient dust, and something metallic. The hall was huge. The ceiling was lost in the darkness. Intertwining lines glowed on the floor, forming a map of the starry sky. In the very center stood a statue, a giant without a face, with a round hole in its chest. The golems stopped. One slowly raised his hand and pointed to the niche. I understood they were waiting for me to act. The ancient map I had received in the mail slipped out of my backpack. The paper glowed with a soft blue light. A quiet ringing sounded in my head, like the distant sound of a bell. With each step toward the statue, the ground beneath my feet vibrated. It seemed as if the temple was a living creature, the giant heart of the earth. I inserted the ancient map into the hole in the chest of the statue standing in the center of the temple. The rumbling grew louder, and the walls shook. The floor beneath my feet opened up into a glowing network of cracks, from which blue rays of light poured forth. The golems raised their heads, their eyes flashing like torches. A low, booming voice sounded in my head, like thunder rolling in the mountains. "You have awakened us. The time for sleep is over. We are coming." A few seconds later, everything around me was illuminated by a blinding white light. I lost consciousness and fell down. I woke up in the same clearing where the tent had stood. It was a morning. The sun was shining through the leaves, and everything seemed normal. Except for one thing. The map was gone, and a spiral mark was blackened on my palm as if burned into my skin. The 2-day journey back to the nearest village flew by in a blur. Sometimes I thought I saw a stone silhouettes flashing behind the trees. However, when I turned around, I saw only tall trees and bushes. A week later, when I returned to civilization, the world was shaken by a series of strange earthquakes. Underground tremors were recorded in places where there had never been seismic activity before. In the center of Africa, in northern Canada, in the deserts of Australia. Scientists were at a loss. I watched the news and understood it was them. The stone guardians had awakened. At night, I had the same dreams. Giant figures walking on the ocean floor. Their eyes burned with amber, and coastal cities shook. Sometimes, when I walk through the city, it seems to me that the ground beneath my feet is humming quietly again, just like that first night. One morning, I found a new piece of paper in my mailbox. It had the same spiral drawn on it and the words, "Stage 2." I don't know who is sending these signs. However, I feel that what began in the heart of the Amazon is only the first step.